Kakadosh Boker or Masechet Sanhedrin Daf Yomi Daf Gimel Amud Aleph 3A1. We were talking about right now. Yes. We were talking about right now. We're speaking about Drisha v'Chakira. What does it mean, Drisha v'Chakira? It means that Dinei Mamonot and Dinei Nefashot need Drisha v'Chakira. Means you have to interrogate and investigate the witnesses. Shneimar b'zeh mishpat echad yeh lachem. Meaning you're going to have one mishpat for all of them, whether it's going to be Dinei Mamonot or Dinei Nefashot. So why did they say Dinei Mamonot? Why did they say that we don't need the Drisha v'Chakira by Dinei Mamonot? We don't want to close the door on the Lovin. Meaning we don't want to come and start closing off that all of a sudden, right? Whether it's going to be that they're going to, they're not going to loan anymore. Imagine somebody's going to come, they don't want to loan any money. Okay, fine. Says the Gemara, Ela me'ata. So now we're going to ask the following question. Yeah, what's the question that we're going to ask? He says like this: we're going to ask the following question. Yeah, Ela me'ata. So now we're going to ask. Ta'u, right? Imagine right now, even if they made a mistake in the Psak Din, and therefore they caused the other person to lose out. Lo yishalmu? Yeah, you have all the Gemara there. Yeah. Okay. Lo yishalmu. What does it mean? Lo yishalmu. It means over here they're not going to lose. They're not going to come. Right? They're not going to come, and they're not going to pay on the ifsed that they caused. So he says, one second. Right now, the Chachamim come and they say that what happens right now, you could get anybody to come in to judge on loans. Because if you remember, we said in the Mishnah that halvaot do not need 3 dayanim. So if you do not need the 3 dayanim, it wasn't the dinei mamonot that we were talking about. So if right now there was a mistake, so therefore they're not going to pay. Now if they're not going to pay, so then Ribono Shalom, so then that is Noel Del Bifnei Lovin. Meaning, you just told me that you don't want to do the Drisha v'Chakira by witnesses. Sheloti nolda Del Bifnei Lovin. You're going to be Noel Del Bifnei Lovin. Why? Because when you come and you have somebody that's going to come and is going to make a mistake, right? And it's also going to be Noel Del Bifnei Lovin. So he says, Ihachi if so, Tarte Ketani. You're right. There are 2 different dinim. Number 1, dinei mamonot bishlosha hediotot, right? Dinei mamonot, you also need 3, but it's already enough for 3 hediotot, 3 simple people, right? Vegezelot v'chavalot bishlosha mumchim. But anything to do with gezelot and chavalot, you need 3 experts. Ve'od, and furthermore, shlosha lamali. Why do we keep on saying again the 3? Everything's the 3. Why did I need 3? Right? Dinei mamonot bishlosha. Gezelot v'chavalot bishlosha. What was dinei mamonot? The chavalot v'gezelot. So why did I have to say then again shlosha 3? If you just told me dinei mamonot is 3, and the translation of dinei mamonot was gezelot v'chavalot, so why do I have to say again 3? Why do I have to say it again? Ela Rava, but rather Rava comes and he says, Tarte Ketani. What does it mean now, Tarte Ketani? We learned 2 different things. What does that mean? Mishum de Rabbi Chanina. The Tana of the Mishnah is teaching 2 different dinim. Dinei mamonot, which is going to be hodaot and halvaot, which is going to be 3 hedyotot. That's why we said, right, of shlosha. But the shlosha is hedyotot, right? And then he comes and he says, the other one is because of Rabbi Chanina. What is Rabbi Chanina now? Right? Rabbi Chanina comes and he says, is the reason why we took off the Drisha v'Chakira and Hodot v'Alvaot was in order not to be Noel Delet Bifnei Lovin. So therefore, because of that, we split it up into 2 different dinim. Okay? Fine. Ravacha bered Ravika Amar. Ravacha, the son of Ravika, came and he said, Midoraita chad nami kasher. Midin Torah, even 1 dayan is going to be kosher, right, for Hodaot and Halvaot. Even 1 dayan. You don't need 3. Even 1. Shneimar, but says the pasuk, Besedek tishpot amitecha. What does that mean? Tishpot is 1 dayan. Tishpot doesn't say tishpetu. Besedek tishpot et amitecha. Ela mishum yosheve kranot. But the Chachamim came and they also wanted, right, 3 dayanim because of, right, yoshve kranot. What does that mean? Sometimes you have people that they're not 100% experts, so they call them the yoshve kranot. And therefore he can make a mistake and be mechayev the zakai, So it comes out that what he's trying to say is that there's going to be two different piskaot, right? Two different psaks to do with our Mishnah. Dinei mamonot, which is hodaot and alvaot. So then you need three midrabanan, and even the hedyotot, right? That's going to be okay. And gezelova chavalot, you need three dayanim mina Torah. But here they need dayanim mumchim. Dayanim mumchim is experts. Yeah. So he comes and he says, right, as follows. Yeah. He says like this. Atu bitlata milo avu yoshve kranot. He comes and he says, are you going to tell me now when they're going to come and they're going to have the din, right? They do not need yoshve kranot. He says, well, I don't understand you. He says, when they're going to judge in front of three dayanim, it can't be that all of them are going to be yoshve kranot, which are not bekim. So says the Gemara, you're right. He says we cannot find that one of them is not going to be, right, gamil. What does that mean, gamil? That he actually knows this stuff. Okay? Fine. Another question. We said that if a person is going to come and they're going to make a mistake, right, he's not going to pay. So he comes and he says like this. He says, right? Yeah? Okay. So he says, are you going to tell me now that you're not going to pay? So kol sheken then if you're going to tell me that they don't need to pay, so kol sheken then what? That it's going to be yoshve kranot. Why? Because at the end of the day, right, you're going to even have more, because if they're not going to be baki in dinei mamonot, and therefore they're not going to care about actually learning it. So therefore, even if they make a mistake, they're not going to pay. So then again, you have the same problem then. So why is it that they needed dayanim that are going to be baki bedinim? He says, if we're going to come and tell them they're going to be patur, so therefore there's going to be more yoshve kranot. Right? One more time. Right now, right? Imagine right now you have a doctor. Right? I'm going to explain it in these terms. Right? And I'm going to tell you that he's going to make you sign, right? That no matter what mistakes he makes, even if it's like mamasha, it's a sign-off. So what happens? You don't want to go to that doctor. Why don't you want to go to that doctor? Very simple. Because since they make you sign that from the beginning, she has nothing to lose. He's not even going to be, you think he actually paid attention, was, meticulous, not meticulous. You think he cared. He's like, yeah, I'm doing it. You think he's going to come and he's going to learn again, or to do the, the 6-month revisions, or all the, I sign it off. Whatever I could do, that's it. So then it's a problem. So Lavdil el says the Gemara, 1 second. If they make a mistake, do the Dayanim have to pay or not? So we know that if they make a mistake, the Dayanim actually have to pay. But if you're going to tell me that they do not have to pay, so then for sure you're going to get Yoshve Kranot. You're going to get somebody that he just passed his exams for the Dayanut, and then he'll never want to continue learning or to perfect himself. Why? Because even if he make a mistake, Kaddish, okay, fine. We all make mistakes. Well, yes, for sure. If they make a mistake, they have to personal pay. Yeah? 1 minute. Yeah? So, right, when we're talking about right now, right, here, right, so what happens is you're going to have even more Yoshve Kranot, right? So says the Gemara, 1 second. Ma'ika ben Rava l'Ravacha bered Ravika. What's the difference between Rava and Ravacha, the son of Ravika? So he says, you know what the difference between them is going to be? Because remember, according to them, we just explained that dinei mamonot is hodaot and alvaot, and you need 3 hedyotot. And the other one, you needed 3 mumchim, 3 experts, or 3 simple people. So he comes and he says, Ika benayu, the difference between them is going to be that which Shmuel says. Shmuel says, Shnaim shedanu dinehen din. When you have 2 judges that they judge, it's a psak din. It's called a judgment. Ela shenikru bedin chatzuf. But they're called a bedin chatzuf. Why are they called a bedin chatzuf? Because they only were two dayanim instead of 3. So they're called, they're a bedin, but they're a bedin chatzuf. Yeah? So he says, Le Rava, according to Rava, le Shmuel, he does not hold of Shmuel. Right? And therefore he holds that 2 people that judge, it's nothing. It's as if they didn't do anything. The Ravacha bered Ravika, right? Ile de Shmuel. But Ravacha bered Ravika, he comes and he says he holds a Shmuel, which means he says, Be'emet, two judges that they do judge, they are considered, right? Good judgment, meaning whatever they judged is a judgment. The only thing is they're betin chatzuf, right? Remember that even by, you're going to find chatzufim anywhere. It doesn't exist. That not because they're dayanim, they're not going to be chatzufim. You understand? Chutzpah exists in all categories of society, right? Because remember, at the end of the day, it's just learning, right? And as long as a person comes and he learns and he becomes a dayan, that's it. So you have a betin chatzuf that they came and they did this chutzpah. So therefore, he comes and he says that is going to be the machloket, right, between Rav Acha bered Ravika and Rava. Do we say that the judgment is a judgment, but they're called a betin chatzuf, or do we say that it's not a judgment whatsoever? Fine. 2 dots. Nezek v'chatzi nezek. Yeah, nezek v'chatzi nezek comes and he says like this. We're talking about, right, damages and half damages. We're talking about in 3 dayanim. Nezek hainu chavalot. So we already said nezek is chavalot. Why? Because when somebody comes and he does a bodily injury to somebody else, so therefore that is considered nezek, right? So why do we need then nezek v'chatzi nezek? Yeah. So he comes and he says as follows. Yeah. So he comes and he says mishum de kabaya lemitne seifa, because we needed to learn chetzi nezek. So that's why we came and we learned nezek. Okay. So he comes and he says like this, right? Since we needed to learn chetzi nezek, so therefore it also taught us nezek shalem, even though we know about nezek shalem. Nezek shalem is chavalot. So chetzi nezek nami ainu chavalot. He says 1 second, but that's also going to be chavalot, right? He says that's also going to be chavalot. So he says tana mamona ve'ktani knasa, right? What does that mean? Right? We learned, right, mamona, and we also learned knas. There's 2 different things you have to remember. There's going to be, right, mammon, and there's going to be knas. What's the difference between them? We know, right, that when a person is going to come, it goes as follows. There's going to be cases of nezek, which are called mammon, which is chavalot really. And then you have knas, which knas is chetzi nezek, meaning like this. When a person has to come and they have to pay half the damages, what is that? That's not money. Because if you have to pay money, you have to pay full damages. It's a knas, it's a penalty. You should watch your animal. So therefore he's coming and he's saying, chetzi nezek is chavalot. He says, because it's included. Because the chetzi nezek of a tam that comes and he damages a human being, he's going to pay chetzi nezek. So he says, no. Mamona is mammon. When you come and you damage something stam, that's called mammon. When you have a short tam that he's going to damage, that is called knas. Why is it a knas? Because you're not really coming and paying the value of the damage. The proof is you're only paying half. So therefore, that is called a knas. It's a fine. It's a penalty. But it's not really mamona. So therefore, we came and we mentioned that it's 2 different things. So says the Gemara, Hani Chalemandamar, but that's only good according to the Mandamar that says Palganiska Knasa. The Chetzi Nezek is a Knas. But according to the Mandamar that says Chetzi Nezek is Mamona, so Michael Meimar, so what are you going to say then? Because it's also the same thing. Meaning everything is talking about Mamonot. So Nezek v'Chetzi Nezek, it's all Mamonot. Even the Chetzi Nezek. So answers the Gemara, Ela I did the Kabbalah Mitne, but since we needed to teach the case of Tashlume Kefel with Tashlume Arba Chamisha, right? The Tashlume Kefel and Arba Chamisha, the Mamon, right? She'eno Mishtalem Beroshu, Gimel Amubet, right? So when we're talking about right now here, we're talking about Tashlume Kefel and Tashlume Arba Chamisha of money, right? Which is basically going to be double payments and Arba Chamisha of the money. She'eno Mishtalem Beroshu, right? Which are going to be Tashlumim, which are not going to be according to the Shurat of Din, which means the real value. It's going to be even more than the value. So Tananami, so to here, we're going to teach Chetzi Nezek, the Mamon Shel Mishalel Berosh, right? Ve'aidi de Kabayel Mitre, Chetzi Nezek, Taninami Nezek. Which means like this. There does exist the other way around. 4 and 5 times, right? When you have to actually pay or double, right? Because when we're coming and we're talking about, right, the double, right? What happens now? So he comes and he says like this. He says, when you have to pay double or you have to pay arba v'chamisha of money, he comes and he says, that's not going to be mishtalem, right? Beroshu, meaning that those tashlumim, right, are not going to be the real value of what's the damage. It's much higher. You're paying 4 times the amount, 5 times the amount. Is that nezek? That's not nezek. You pay much more than what it is. So therefore he comes and he says, right, he says, so too, once we taught the upper values, which are going to be the 4 and 5 times the amount, or the kaful, the kefel, so therefore, we also taught the one which is below, right? Which is going to be the nezek and even chetzi nezek. Basically, we're teaching the chetzi nezek. And once we taught the chetzi nezek, we're also going to teach the nezek as well. Okay? Fine. Nekuda. Okay? Now we're going to continue. We're talking about now the 3 dayanim. How do you know that you need 3 dayanim? Shelosha menalan. How do we know? So if you remember in the Mishnah itself, We learned yesterday, how do we know about 23? Right? And we learned the Eda, so that's already going to be 20. And then we said, so that's to be the majority. So therefore, we said that always, whenever you're going to the positive, you need one extra. When you're going to the negative, you need two extra. And in order that you don't have a betin shakul, so you always need another 3, not another 1 or 2. Okay? Because again, if you have 10 against 10, so again, you have the shakul. But even besides that, you need that there's always going to be more people saying one thing than the other. So therefore, you already had 22. And then we said that in order that it shouldn't be shakul of 11, you always have one extra. So it's going to be 23. So which one? Yes, always. Okay, so shlosha minalan. 3 dayanim. How do we know that you need 3 dayanim? The Tanu Rabbanan that we learned in a Braita. V'nikra balabait el Elohim. The balabait is going to come close to Elohim. Harekan echad. That's dayan echad. Because if you remember yesterday, we learned that this Elohim is referring to the dayanim. So he says, v'nikra balabait el Elohim is echad. Right? Then it says, right? Ad Elohim yavod var shnehem. Right? Until Elohim is going to, they're both going to have to come. That's the second time. Arsher yarshiyun Elohim. Right? That's a pasuk. Meaning, if you guys take the pasuk, right? You have it there in Mishpatim. You have it over there where it says, right? Al kol davar pesha. It's the bet. It starts from already Aleph, right? And Aleph and then the bet. Look in the Torah Ora Shalem on the left side. You have here, number 1. Number 2, Al kol davar pesha Elohim. Elohim. So therefore, since it's written 3 times Elohim, so therefore that's going to be 3 dayanim. Those are the words of Rabbi Yoshia. Rabbi Yonatan says, Rishon techila neemar. The first one was just mentioned, right? To mention the concept, you have to go to the dayan. The endorshin techilot. We don't make a drasha on the first one. Meaning like this. If you want to come and you want to tell me that something is extra, how could you tell me that? Only after the first time. Because the first time you have to know the gufo shel inyan, you have to know what we're talking about. So who do they have to go to? You have to go to Elohim. And here the Elohim refers to the dayan. So for the first time, I cannot count as part of the 3. I wanted to say, since it's mentioned 3 times, so you know it's 3 dayanim. Yeah, but the first time, you have to tell me where do you go? Where's the ktovet? If I have to tell you you're going to come to 310 95th Street, and I told it to you once, but then I told you another 2 times, I cannot make a dirasha on the first time. The first time I'm telling you, you have to come to the Betin. So you have to come to 310 95th Street. Chazak u'baruch. But that means you could only come and tell me that the extra is the other 2, not the 3. Because the first one you cannot do. No, it's the same thing. Same thing. Yeah. Right? He comes and he says like this. He says, Ela ada Elohim yavod vashnehem harekan echad. Asher yarshiyun Elohim harekan shnaim. So you're right. The first one, I cannot count. The first one, I cannot count. Why? The first one, I need to know the ktovet. I need to know to stop. What are you doing? Now I need extra. I'm never going to say that the first one is extra. So therefore, he comes and he says, I've got 2 which are extra. But he says, Ve'em betin shakul. If I only have 2 extra, I never have an equal betin. And therefore, since I never have an equal betin, mosifim alehem od echad, hare kan shlosha. Right? I'm always going to come and I'm going to add an extra 1. You have 3 dayanim. Right? And therefore, that's why. Meaning you're right. I don't have 3 dayanim because I have 3 times in the pasuk Elohim. The first one, I needed it. So I only have 2 times. But since you know that you can never have 2, because you always need an odd number, right? You can never have shakul. So that's why you always need 3. So says the Gemara, Neima bedorshin tchilot kamipalge. Right? Are you going to tell me then that's a machloket? Are we going to be doresh the first one or not? The more savar dorshin tchilot, more savar dorshin tchilot, which means that, 1 second, for sure we had 3, and for sure 2 were extra. Now that you say 2 were extra, maybe the first one was also considered kilu extra. So do we a machloket? Because there's a machloket. Do we come and do we say dorshin tchilot or not? And so no. Dechule alma, according to everybody. Yeah, he comes and he says as follows. He says, according to everybody, and dorshin tchilot. Right? We're not going to be doresh tchilot. Meaning the first one is not extra. So since the first one is not extra, you cannot learn from it. So imken, Rabbi Yoshia, so Rabbi Yoshia is going to tell you, imken, if so, name akra, the pasuk should have said, v'nikra balabait el hashofet. It should have said that he's going to come to the shofet. My Ela Elohim. So why does it say Ela Elohim? Shema mina leminyana. Comes to teach you it's the minyan. What does it mean now, the minyan? It comes to teach you, right, that it's coming to teach you the entire concept of that it's coming to teach you the numbers. Meaning, you're right. If it was only written by itself, so the first one, you needed it by itself, and then you only have 2 extra. He says, no, you know why the first one I could also count? I could also count the first one because of the use of the terminology. Meaning, what term did I use? I didn't say Ela Shofet. I said Ela Elohim. The fact that I changed and I said Elohim instead of the Shofet, even the first one I could use. That is the Shita of that is the Shita of Rav Yoshia. Rabbi Yonatan, and Rabbi Yonatan is going to come and tell you, Lishna de Almanach. He says, no, you can't even use the first one. Why? Because Elohim was just a language of the people. Like people say, Kedamrinche, Mandi Ladina, whoever has a deen, Likrav legabe Dayana, should go to the Dayan. They don't go in front of the Hedyot. They go in front of the Dayan. So therefore, it comes out of the Torah the first time around, he used the terminology of the Elohim in order to be mitzaref l'minyana dayanim. He says, but rather, since that's normal, what they call him. Meaning they come and they say that this is like a person that's very, very high up. Okay, so he wants to say that a shofet is not a dayan mumche. And therefore, when it said Elohim, it's ki'ilu, it's saying that no, that he's an expert. So since he's going to be an expert, it's much higher up. So therefore, you cannot come and use the first one whatsoever. Rav Yoshia comes and he says, let le betin note. He says, what? Does he hold that we're not going to have a case of a betin, right, which are always going to be machria, which is a betin shenu shakul? So he says, Vatanya, we learned to the bright. What does it mean to teach you? Lintot achre rabim lehatot, right? Which means, right, that there was a kefel here to do with the ataya after the rabim. The Torah says, betin note. Make a betin which is going to be note. Right? Which means that it's always going to be that you're going to be machriya al piarov and not a betin shakul. It means you always need lehatot. Lehatot means that they can incline from one place to another place. So says the Gemara, they hold like Rabbi Yehuda Damar shiv'im, right? That this is why we talk about that you even have a bedin of 70. Meaning, you remember yesterday we brought down there was a machloket. Do we have a bedin of 71 or a bedin of 70? Because Moshe Rabbeinu was included in the shivim zekenim or not, and therefore we come and we said so. Therefore, he says he's learning like the shita that really Be'emet Sanhedrin Gedolah is going to be of 70, and Rabbi Yehuda Omer it's going to be of 70. So therefore, just like Sanhedrin Gedolah is going to be 70, which means it could become shakul because you could have 35 against 35. So to the betin, the regular betin could also be shakul, and you don't need a bedin note. So it all depends on the circumstances. So says the Gemara, Eimar de Shamale le Rabbi Yehuda b'Sanhedrin Gedolah tichtiv ekra, aval bishar bedina mishamale. He says, one second. Where did you see that you could have bedin shakul? Only in Sanhedrin Gedolah. You know why? Sanhedrin Gedolah, it's a pasuk. Esfali shivim zekenim, Ziknei Israel. Get me 70 zekenim. It's a pasuk. So then you're right. You're going to tell me is Moshe Rabbeinu included, not included, so it becomes 71, or becomes 70. But the pasuk says 70. So there, if it's written in the pasuk mefurash, I could say, you know what? Okay, fine. So Sanhedrin Gedolah, you could have 70 because what are the odds of having mamash 35 against 35? Yeah, it's very unlikely, right? Usually you see it, right? Hey, remember, we're not talking about yeah. But he says, but a one of three, right? Or if you're going to only have two, you could always have one. Well, you could always have a tie, right? Now you're going to tell me maybe be'emet there's no difference, right? He says, "Vatnam." We learned in the Mishnah, smichat zekenim v'rifat eglah b'shosha. We said when the zekenim are going to come, they're going to do semicha on the animal. For parelem davar shel tzibur, remember they did an avera or arifat eglah rufa. So we're talking about that there was 3 dayanim. These are words of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda says you need 5 dayanim. And what's the reasoning of Rabbi Yehuda? Why do you need 5 dayanim for eglah rufa or for the semichat zekenim? He says v'samechu is plural 2, right? He says v'samechu is lashon rabim, which is shnayim. Zikneh is shnayim. Ve'em bedin shakul. You don't have bedin shakul. So mosifim alehem od echad harei kan chamisha. There he said, since it says v'samechu zikneh, right, and it says v'samechu, and then it says zikneh, samechu is plural. So minimum of plural is 2. Zikneh is plural. Minimum of plural is 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. But you don't have bedin shakul. So because of that, you have 5. That's the reason why, be'emet, you have it. So there's no raya that Rav Yehuda and Rav Yoshia are the same halacha. We wanted to say that Kilu Rabbi Yehuda, that Rabbi Yoshia holds like Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yoshia. No. Shivim Zekenim is one thing. It's written Mefurash in the Torah. So Shivim, it's going to be Shakul. Why? The likelihood and everything, and it's written Mefurash in the Torah, fine. But other than that, you never do that. So he says that Rabbi Yoshia Gufa, right? That Rabbi Yoshia different from Rabbi Yehuda. Yes, but Rabbi Yoshia is even better. Right? He comes and he says, is even better than Rabbi Yehuda. Teilu Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda, Sanhedrin Gdolah hu deletle. Only by Sanhedrin Gdolah that you don't need a bedin noteh. But at every other one, you need a bedin noteh. Right? He says, Rabbi Yoshia, Beshar bedin anami lele. He holds that you don't even need it in other ones. Meaning, according to him, you could even have a bedin shakul, according to Rabbi Yoshia. Not like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, only Sanhedrin Gdolah, you don't need bedin noteh. But according to Rabbi Yoshia, a regular bedin also does not need to be noteh. So he says, so what do you do then with lintot? If at the end of the day it says you should be noteh, so therefore what do you do with the word lintot? Lintot means to incline, which means you don't have an inclination, you have half-half. So he says, mukila b'dinei nefashot. He says, no, that's going to be dinei nefashot. Meaning, dinei nefashot, you're right. There you need that there's always going to be an inclination. Okay? Whether it's going to be for the good or for the bad. However, though dinei mamonot, you do not need an inclination. Okay? Okay? But that's what you came and we learned in the Mishnah. If you have two people, then two of them that they say zakai, one of them says chayav. Zakai is going to be zakai. Two people say chayav, one of them says zakai, is going to be chayav. Neima the local Rav Yoshia. You're going to tell me that that's not like Rav Yoshia. So says the Gemara, even if you're going to tell me it is Rav Yoshia, they're going to make a kavachomer from dinei nefashot. Ah, you cheated, I see. Yeah, what does that mean? If dinei nefashot, which is going to be more chamud, you're going to come and you're going to go after the rov. Dinei mamonot lo kol sheken, you should go after the rov. Meaning you should go after the rov also here. Okay, and that's why because of that, we are not going to say that it's going to be like Rav Yoshia. Okay, fine. 2 dots. Tanuna banan. We learned in a braita. The braita comes and it says as follows: Dinei mamonot bishlosha. Dinei mamonot are going to be with 3 people. Rabbi comes and he said with 5. So it's going to be nigmar adin with 3. Okay, which means that they just needed it at the end, right? That you always have like 3 against 2, basically. Okay, so that's what you're going to have a full bedin, 3 against 2. So says the Gemara, atu betlata milo gemar dina betrei. Even if you have 3, you nigmar adin with 2. What's the problem? Why do you need 5? You said you need 5, so that way you always have 3 against 2. So the nigmar din al pi 3. But I don't understand. If you have 3, so you have 2 against 1. So says the Gemara, hachi kamar. This is what it means to say. Since the Gemar din is going to be with 3, alma kasavar. So you see from here, tlata kiktive the Gemar din aktive. When we have here 3, it's by the Gemar din. Okay, that's what it says about the 3. So he says, right? So therefore, that's what he's trying to say, that according to Rabbi, when we come and we say that it's 3 dayanim, it's even by 3 dayanim by the Gemar din, not only right by the initial thing as well. So Megadef Rabbi Yavu, Ela Me'ata. So Rabbi Yavu comes and he starts asking a question. He says, I don't understand you. You need 141 in order that they should finish with 71. Meaning, according to your logic, one more time, according to your logic, you wanted that the 3 should be for the Gemar din. For you to have 3 in the Gemar din, you need 5. Because remember, you always need the majority. So 3 against 2. You're meaning, if I want the majority, and the majority have to be 3, because when we mention 3, we're talking about the Gemar din of 3. So therefore you need 5. Right? 3 is the majority of 5. So that's what you have to have. So he says, so 1 second, let's use the same logic. Sanhedrin Gedolah, how much are they? It's okay, we just mentioned whether it's going to be 70 or 71. But if you're going to tell me now that it's going to be the 71, and 71 is going to be the Gemar din, so therefore, how much do I need? 71 has to be the majority. So how much do you need? You need 141. In order that 71 is going to be the majority of the time of the Gemar din. Then the Sanhedrin Tana, you need 45. Because if you need 23, 23 is already the majority of the 45. So therefore, you're going to need 45 dayanim. And 23, which are going to be the Gemar din, the majority. Right? He says, obviously we don't do that. Ela, but rather, esfali shivimish, amarachmana, mishat, asifah. So he comes and he says it's going to be mishat, asifah. What does that mean? Mishat Asifa. He comes and he says, right, as follows. He comes and he says like this. He says, Mishat Asifa. He says that from the beginning when they're doing it. So he says, right, and not during the time of the Gemar Din, meaning when they start the judgment. When they start the judgment, Shivim, right? But they don't need it at the Gemar Din. When it says they're going to judge it, right, it's also going to be the same thing. Mishat Shvidat Ha'edah. Nishat kriva shlosha. We're talking about when they come to the bedin, it's 3 dayanim. Meaning, even from the beginning, we're talking about, right, 3. You do not need 5. Elahainu tamad Rabbi. So what's the reasoning of Rabbi then? It says, right? It says, trei ne'emar. It says like this: Asher yashin Elohim trei. Does it mean 2 dayanim? Ne'emar Elohim lemata, ne'emar Elohim lemala. Ma lemata shnayim, af lemala shnayim. Ve'em bedin shakul mosifim alehem od echad. Arei kan chamisha. Listen to this, a beautiful chidush, a new way of learning Rebbe. We said that Rebbe comes and he says, it says Asher Yashiyun Elohim. Elohim, we said was in plural. So if it's plural, right, it doesn't say Eloah, it says Elohim. So plural, 2 dayanim. Now we're making Gzera Shavah. It says Elohim lemala, but it says Ada Elohim Yavor Devar Shenehem, and it says Elohim lemata, which is also going to be, so therefore it's 4. Just like above it's 4, 2, so to the below it's 2. Now you have 2 against 2. Now we know that you don't do in Bedin Shakul. So that's why you need 1 more. Therefore you're going to have 5 dayanim. And that's the reason why he's coming and he's saying that you're going to need 5 dayanim.